Let's get into today's episode of Why We Succeed.
What's going on, everybody? It's your man, Immanuel, and we are back with a new episode of Why We Succeed. Today, I have a very, very special guest joining me on the podcast, the one and only, my man, Rob Allen. How you doing today, Rob?
What's up, man? Super excited to chat.
Oh, man, I'm excited to have you on here, man. I actually came across your content not too long ago. A copywriter that I know, he had told me about the Copywriting Summit. I joined it. I was enjoying, all of the great speakers that you guys had on there. And you already know how it works. We start signing on to different people's emails lists and start going down the rabbit hole. And there was a video series that you did about if you were starting over, whether you would do like Upwork or whether you would do Fiverr, and see like which one of those would get you the most, customers and the most clients. And I really enjoyed going through that process with you and seeing what that looked like. And that was when I was like, yo, man, this dude, Rob, is not only an amazing copywriter, but I like the way that you were so vulnerable and transparent when it comes to your process and looking at things from a beginner's perspective. So I'm really honored to have this opportunity to come on and speak with you today. So I really appreciate it, Rob. Thank you.
Heck yeah, dude. Those challenges are always super taxing on me, but they're always super helpful to people going along the journey. So I've actually done them twice. I did one back in, I think, 2018 on my friend Ryan Robinson's blog. And I actually approached him kind of like cold. I was like, dude, all these people are talking about doing like, they make 6 figures in 3 months and all this stuff. And I was like, what if I just pretended to do it from scratch? And so we actually documented it for the first time on his blog. And then I was like, I got kind of separated from it. And people, that kind of was the main thing I was known for a while, is doing this crazy copywriting challenge. And then I was like, I want to do it on my own property, because it's like kind of sucked that it's always having to link out to his blog post. So I redid it on YouTube and documented the whole thing again. And dude, people don't realize how hard it is to because I was splitting my day in half, doing half the time cold email, half the time on Upwork, and then just seeing what could happen. And by the end, it's like I'm so tired because I'm documenting, I'm trying to share emails with people like along the way. And so I took a break after that. I was like, I've got to go off the grid, but those are always super cool. So I'm glad you were able to find me through that, because I have plans to do a lot more challenges like that, where I'm going to be doing some stuff on Fiverr, some stuff with cold email, and just kind of doing a lot more to kind of embrace this like raw challenge nature, because there is a certain vulnerability that kind of goes along with it.
Right.
So it's always super fun.
Yeah, and what really connected with me is that, one, I could tell it was taxing on you, because like I love the fact that you weren't like, yo, this is nothing, like star copywriter, I got this. Like you were like, yo, this is really running me ragged a little bit. And just to continue going through that process. And you're right, it wasn't Fiverr, it was Upwork and cold email, right? And you were talking about the differences between the two of those. And I really appreciated the fact that, as somebody that is kind of new to this space, just seeing what that process was like if you were to just start from zero. And the one thing, and I just got to be honest, having been a seller on Fiverr, one of the things that I always look at in people's reviews is how they deal with, tough clients or bad feedback. And that was one of the things that resonated with me, is the one time when the person, they said something really mean to you. And I really like the way that you handled it. It was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to like go tit for tat with you, but like, okay, for this moment, I'm going to let you know that I'm not a beginner. Like, this is all stuff. And then they were like, oh, no, wait, Rob, no, I want to work with you. And it's just one of those things where it's like, no, like the way that you treated me in the beginning is how you really feel. And it's like, that's the real you. And likewise for yourself, like you were a very genuine, honest person, and you were giving your all for all of these clients, even in just your proposals. And that really resonated with me.
That's one of people's most favorite parts of the whole challenge, is when I flexed on that guy.
Yes.
Because as you said, I was going undercover and basically pretending to be a total rookie. So I couldn't use any of my samples, couldn't use anything like I'd ever done in the past. So it was basically me actually simulating the beginner experience. And so by the end, as you said, like I was tying my hair back, like I was showing up in sweatshirts, like I was so tired, and I was like, whatever. So this dude like popped off on me because I was kind of just trying to be chill with him.
Right.
And he was like, I don't deal with people like this, or something to that effect. And I was like, bro, I am a professional. I've written for all this stuff. Like I put all my credentials, and then I just stopped responding to him, and he still was responding back to me. He's like, oh, please, let's talk. I was like, this is not going to be how it is. Like, I don't deal with people like that. And I encourage my students, anyone who follows me, I'm always like, you have to build those boundaries, those barriers around your lifestyle and like the business that you build, because I think so much of the content around like freelance marketing is like just talking about the freedom aspects of it, but it's not. If you're building an actual business, you don't have to take, any client who walks in the door. You can decide who these people are and the criteria you set, because all of your happiness is going to be determined by the types of clients you work with, the people you're surrounded with every day. So if these people are draining you, they're like talking down to you, I'm not going to let people like that in my life. I don't know about you, but like, I don't like when people talk to me like that. So I'm like,
not at all.
It was my one moment of weakness in the challenge. And I think I kind of admitted that, but I was like, I'm not going to let people talk to me like that in this environment, because I encourage everyone to have a backbone when it comes to reaching out to clients and like really setting those boundaries, because that's the part of the game that like it takes the longest time to actually learn, right? Because it's like, in the beginning, you just want to get anybody. You just want to get any client you can to get some life in the system. But then down the road, it actually becomes the opposite, where setting actually barriers, making yourself a little bit harder to reach, actually being selective about the types of clients you work with actually ends up making you more successful, making them want to work with you more and want to pay higher prices. So it's just kind of a counterintuitive flip that kind of happens as you get in the game a little bit more.
Most definitely. And let me know if you can relate to this, because I've definitely been in those instances where starting out, you'll accept any clients. And what I found is those clients who are usually some of the biggest headaches are the ones that are always looking for a deal, the ones that don't necessarily treat you with the most respect. But then those clients who are playing, top dollar, those are the ones that are easiest to work with. They're nice. And it's like, I'm starting to see a pattern here. And it's like, I'd rather work with that other group as opposed to that other group that's such a headache. And they're not even that great to work with to begin with.
Yeah. There's like a famous meme, I think, that goes around where there's like the $500 client and they try to bargain, negotiate with you and all this stuff. And $50,000 clients like invoice paid. And it's a meme because it's actually so true. Like, because there's like this whole ethos that goes into like, being able to select really good clients. And it's a whole skill set in and of to itself. But like, you really can't replace the good feelings, the amount of like respect, the ease of work that goes into actually having a good client relationship. Because cheap clients, I mean, I've gotten to the point in my business where I don't even let the type of conversation ever into the world. Like one guy one time tried to like, he was like, I don't really know if a $1,000 audit makes sense, or because we actually do this like really intensive like audit on businesses. My business partner and I charge like $1,000 for it. And it's actually a really good deal. And he was like, I don't know, like, would you be able to do it for $50? And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I actually responded back to him and I was like, there's no way I'm going to do a 16-hour audit of all your company's stuff and put it into a report and then show you how to execute on it for $50. And he responded and he was like, you're right. And like, he ended up actually wanting to work with us. But like a younger version of me would not have said that. They would have been like, oh, well, maybe I'll just do it for $50. And like, he's going to actually, be a good client. But that was not the case. So you just have to set those barriers and just be willing to, because they will chase you.
Right. Such a great point. And one of the questions that I always like to ask my guests is, how do you define success? What is it for you, Rob?
For me, it's kind of easy. Like, I'm actually kind of an easygoing guy. Like, in the copywriting world, like a lot of people are so like rigid about their systems and all this stuff. And for me, like, it's just a combination of like, am I doing something I really like to do? Like, if nobody paid me, would I get up today and just do the thing that I'm doing? And then am I surrounded by people that I actually like doing it with? And so if I'm meeting those two criteria, I'm having the best time of my life. So like copywriting to me is like, if I'm able to, select or build a business and with those two things coming true, I'm having a blast. So, and that comes through in everything that you're doing. So like, I don't know about you, but like for me, it's really just boils down to that, because there is no substitute there. Whenever I think about like not doing something I enjoy, I think about like all the things I used to do in my former life when I was a banker, or even sometimes when I was like working with clients I didn't really enjoy. And so everything that I do, the entire way that I define my success is like just moving towards those two things. Surrounded by people I like and doing things I would do even if I wasn't made to do it anyways.
Right. So I'm curious, how long has that been your definition of success? Has it always been that way, or is it something that you newly adopted?
It's been an evolution over time. I feel like with everything, right? So it's like the version of me today is not the same one that you would have talked to 7 or 8 years ago when I first got started in copywriting, because back in the day, man, I think you have a question you wanted to potentially talk about where we're like, what was it like when I was first getting started or something like that?
Yes.
But like, I should have never been a copywriter. I say this in every time I'm like talking to anyone, like I didn't study marketing in school. I didn't have any aptitude for writing whatsoever. Like I only did it just to like for English papers in high school. And that was like the extent of writing. Like, what am I like? I actually was the valedictorian of my high school. I was a super nerd in high school, and they were like, "You have to write a speech," and I'm like, "I don't know how to write a speech." So like, I ended up writing a poem and reading it for like that graduation or whatever. So like, writing to me was like a foreign language. So I actually ended up going into like a banking career path in college. Like I studied financial institutions management, which if you want to drill me on this, we can get deep into it. I know how to run a bank. I know all this stuff about derivatives and loans. Like that's like truly like if that's like under the surface of everything. Like that's actually my deepest and true passion. Like I'm a numbers guy at heart. So becoming a copywriter was unreal to me. Like, so I kind of stumbled into this world. Like I sent a cold email to Ramit Sethi one day and pitched him on a random business idea. He hated the idea and he was like, "This is dumb, but your writing style is really cool. We want to hire you." And I was like, "I've never heard what copywriting is." Like I basically jumped and just took the leap and quit my job at a bank that day and went to become a copywriter. So when I was first just deciding on like success, like I kind of feel like coming into the world at that angle, I just started consuming like, you know, I started seeing like Ty Lopez stuff about how he was a millionaire and like all this stuff online about like all these people had achieved like a certain level of financial success. And I'm like, one, I just quit a job in banking. So I took a massive pay cut to become a copywriter. And then I was in like, and I was really bad at it for like the first year. Like I almost got fired like several times with my job. Like I had performance reviews. Like they were like, "Dude, I don't know what you did in a former life, but you're not a writer." And I was like, "Of course, I studied banking in school." You know? So for me, like in the beginning, I had a deep obsession with just becoming like having like a certain level of status in the industry and having like there was definitely like financial success I was chasing. So like I would definitely say there was like a good 3 or 4 or 5 years there in the beginning of my career where I was just trying to prove that I was someone who deserved to be in any conversations because I felt so bad about where I stood as a copywriter.
Okay.
So success for me at that time was just like, you know, I feel like for the longest time I have a little book around here. I keep it actually on my desk. And this was after I went to a Tony Robbins event in 2017. I filled this notebook up with like a bunch of goals for my life and all this stuff. And I had written down back then, I was like, if I could just make 6 figures a year, I feel like everything in my life would fall into place. And so like everything in my life was just defined by this one number. And then, you know, that for me was for the longest time was a definition of success. And then I like started to work for branches of Agora. My freelance business really started to take off. Like some of the compounding effects of being in this industry for a really long time started to catch up to me. And like all of a sudden, you know, 6 figures doesn't seem to be the thing. Like now I've made 6 figures and not just like in a year, but actually in a shorter time frame. And so then, you know, you wake up and you're like, what is the next goal? Like what is the, if I'm going to keep moving the goalpost at all times, like what am I actually shooting for?
Right.
So then that's when I started to really go deep into some personal growth stuff and kind of get to the core of like what I actually wanted to be doing. Like why did I choose this vehicle of copywriting to begin with?
And that actually kind of goes where I want to touch on, because you mentioned you are a numbers guy, you know, like that's your forte. And my question is more along the lines of, when did you begin to actually enjoy copywriting? Was it because did you enjoy it from the very start, even though it wasn't something that you were naturally good at? Or did that enjoyment that you have for copywriting develop over time? What did that look like?
It's funny because it comes in waves, right? So like, I feel like for me, it was the first year of copywriting was just, I was obsessed with the idea that someone I completely idolized. Like Ramit Sethi was, remember, I'm a finance guy. Like he's like the pinnacle of financials, like in the financial world. And like, I was cherry plucked to work for him. So like, I was like, I just loved copywriting because of the fact that Ramit was like, this is something that you're good at and you should focus on. So like, I feel like for the first year I was able to ride that wave of like just really liking writing.
Mhm.
And like, just because like, I was like, oh, people are going to pay me to sit at home and like write blog posts, and I'm going to work with one of my idols. Like,
Yeah.
to me, that was the greatest version of anything. Like, I was like, this is
Right.
cool. So, but then like the side of copywriting that I really started to love was some of the stuff about psychology.
Mm.
And I'll definitely remember like a big turning point for me was I had I'd been writing blog posts, I'd been doing like some ultimate guide type content and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And there was a turning point where they were like, "Hey, you're doing pretty good on this stuff. Do you want to take a crack at writing this cross sale campaign?" So that was a promo that we were going to take like a group of customers and try to introduce them to another set of products.
Okay.
And I was like, I feel like I know this niche. Like, let me take a crack at it. So I wrote the email, and I sent it across to for a copy review. And my editor was like, dude, this is really good. Like, this is good just to go straight to Ramit. And we sent it, and Ramit got it. And he's like, this is really good. Just sent it. And we sent it, and it outperformed like the past like 4 or 5 like sales
Wow.
campaigns they had done. And so I was like, wait, I sat in my room, which back then I lived in like a really tiny 400 square foot apartment.
Uh-huh.
And I sat in my room and I wrote something that I think made like 90 or $100,000. I mean, it was like an
Wow.
insane number because he had a big customer base.
Mhm.
And I was like, how's that possible? How can a
Right.
person have words or thoughts and like write something that can make that amount of money? And that's really when my obsession took off, because I was like,
Mhm.
there's certain things I did in this email that like I could apply to other areas. And so I started to get on some launches and do some, have some clients on the side. And just like, I was like, wow, I can write something and make an insane impact on this. And it felt like
Yeah.
power. I felt like power was like coursing through my arms. And I was like, I am addicted to this emotion. I
Right.
want to do more of it.
Oh man, I love that. I love that. And one of the things that I can say from watching some of your YouTube videos and even just listening to you talk about your writing process, I can tell that it's more than just sitting down writing to make money, right? Like I feel like that's something that I hear echoed so much from copywriters is, okay, how much money this email made. But when I listen to you, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, it's more so about the psychology or the underworkings behind the email. And it's not just, okay, can this email make money? It's like, yeah, it can. But like it seems like you're more concerned with like the intricate, like under the hood type of stuff. And I'm going somewhere with this. I'm curious to know, like, what is your process when it comes to like analyzing a email that you're writing or a sales campaign? Like, what does that process look like for you?
That's a really good question. I don't think most people think about it. So there's a couple of different ways of thinking about it, right? Which is one, in the client world where you're like interfacing with a client. The client needs that email to probably make some money like
Right.
fast. So in my world, I'm like, how can I bring fast ROI to a client? And in
Mhm.
that world, you've got to make your emails make money. But like, and one of the things I started to see as I started working some launches or like work with clients over the not just a one-off email or like
Mhm.
a monthly email,
Mhm.
like taking over their email list and actually
Mhm.
managing like a group of people
Mhm.
over time. And then that's when it really becomes fascinating to me to start to get under the hood and start to think about some of the psychology elements of like, really shaping people's beliefs over the long term. Because really that's what copywriting is, right? So you have like claims that you're making, and you're
Mhm.
going to introduce proof points. And those proof points are hopefully leading your audience to actually make better decisions. And those decisions can lead to consuming your products, more consumption
Right.
of your content, other things like that. So it's been kind of interesting to kind of watch the evolution of my own thought process on like copywriting, where now I have my own email list, and I'm able to take them on journeys with me. And like, I am very methodical about planning the type of content I do. Like, I don't even send like a sales email every day. Like, some people recommend this strategy. I'm not against this strategy. It's just
Mhm.
not necessarily like the core of how I actually do things. So,
Mhm.
I've been able to move my audience with me from the early days of like, I had like 10 people on my email list, to now over, 15,000 people are, and it's kind of interesting because, my emails sometimes are just kind of seeding beliefs and seeding ideas and kind of walking people down journeys with me, to the point where my audience now knows how to think, and they know how to respond to things. They know how, like, I want them to respond to things. So it's not about the sales arm of things now. Like,
Mhm.
I'm sure they're excited when I actually have products to introduce them to. Like, we recently launched a product, and people were like, "Yes, this is exactly what we wanted," and that's the reaction you want, right, from readers. So over time, my beliefs have shifted away from more of that focus on sales to more like, how do we like move people's beliefs and identity in a way that they are really bonded to a brand over time in a way that's really fun for the person to come along the journey with you. Because I don't know about you, but like, it's kind of cool to be along the ride of like a brand or a business or a person for years to come. Like, I know people who've been like, they've been subscribed to Mr. Beast since he was like the guy who made like random videos on YouTube. And so
Yes.
like watching his content evolve over time, like that man doesn't do hardcore direct response copywriting, but he has more power than any freaking email list in the world,
Right.
because they've gone with him on that journey. He's been, he shows you how he thinks and his marketing and his materials and stuff like that, to the point where you're like, how do I not root for this guy? And that's the kind of feeling you want to have for like the brands that you're writing for, is like, they're rooting for you. Like, they're excited to go along this journey with you, because it's not about just the next sale. It's about like the ride.
Right. And with that in mind, how do you connect with the audience on that level? Like, is there anything in particular that you are trying to deliver to them or share with them?
I think one, you've got to know your people, right? So like it's part of it is like, you've got to do some deep research on like, who am I specifically talking to? Because I've written on behalf of brands before where it's like, I personally am not like in the demographic, but I get so deep in kind of trying to understand who I'm writing to that I already know kind of generally how they're going to respond to things, like, and how they're going to react to different ideas. Like one list that I wrote for the longest time was like in this really like natural health niche. And so like, it was like natural ways to like heal your thyroid. And so like, I go deep in these communities. Like, I set up like an account where I was like, I had like a Facebook account. It was like Sarah Allen. And I was pretending like I had like thyroid issues and like getting in there and like reading the comment threads and all this stuff. And so you start to see like, one, how people communicate, like two, like how also like what typical things do they respond to? Like, if someone posts a news story in there, like what are the people in your market, like what do they react like? Right. And so that can kind of be a way to kind of start to shape, like, you start to know these people inside and out, so that they're not like just like this blank number where you see like, here's how many email subscribers you have. It's like this, like, you start to think of like actually some of the customers and you're like writing to them. So part of it is just kind of understanding that. So like, for my own email list, I'm writing to copywriters or people that work in marketing.
Yes.
So I know kind of how that they generally are going to react to certain things. And so I purposely choose some information that's related to that. Okay. But over time, you start to just not know, like, the type of response that you're going to get to something that you share, but like what's next. And then that's what's really fascinating, to kind of know what's around the corner. It's funny because like I see some of my like reflection on like some predictions that I've made like years ago, and people that have been with me on the journey for years, it's kind of funny to see like they're like, man, that's kind of crazy. Like, I wrote like this ebook in I think like 2017 where I mentioned like really good emails. I don't know if you've ever used this website, but it's like a collection of like emails that like you can use for inspiration and things of that nature. And I mentioned it in 2017 as a good resource to study. And I just saw someone like post the other day that was like a pretty well-known influencer. And they were like, this new game-changing site, it's called Really Good Emails. Have you guys ever heard of it? And I'm like, dude, I talked about this like 5 years ago.
Right.
So it's kind of funny because like, if you can help your audience kind of already know what's coming next, they're going to be enjoying that journey for life. And that's going to be really fun for them to kind of be ahead of the curve and just be along that ride with you. Yeah.
And they'll remember that you're the first person that they heard it from too, and that kind of goes to building that credibility. It's like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but Rob told me about that 5 years ago. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's a really good feeling. And I'm curious, Rob, with your background, as far as like your career, starting as a banker and then transitioning into being a copywriter, when did you kind of recognize like, okay, I'm not just going to be working for other people, but I'm going to be establishing my own business? Like, did you know that when you made that leap into copywriting, or was it something that happened along the journey?
Definitely happened along the journey. One, I didn't even know that you could have your own business as a copywriter. Like, remember I quit my job to actually join as a full-time employee, essentially. So right out of the gate, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going from this job that was paying me X, and now I'm making half of X to do copywriting. So I was like, one, I'm thinking this is going to be like a low-paying industry, but maybe it's like has growth potential. So as I kind of got in there and got in the ranks and was like, chatting with other copywriters, it became obvious to me that they had clients on the side. And that was when I was like, oh, so people, when they end their job, they don't just keep thinking about their job. They actually go do stuff for their clients, or they have like clients on the side.
Right.
And so I didn't really do anything with it for like, I think, the first year or so, because like I just was kind of focusing in on Ramit's company and kind of just focusing on servicing the one employer that I had. But then I'll never forget the conversation that I ended up getting to, where it was kind of funny, because I used to live back in Nashville, Tennessee, and there was a natural health and supplement company called drx.com that was growing insanely rapidly at the time. And the directors of marketing, they were actually big fans of Ramit's content, Ramit's stuff. And they had looked up his copywriters, because they were like, okay, who's doing this stuff? And they saw that I was in Nashville, and they were like, this dude is in Nashville and he writes for him, so let's meet with him. So I ended up going to like a Whole Foods, which is the best meeting place for like a natural health company, right? So, and these two guys are like, these guys are like, they're like eating breakfast like at Whole Foods, and I show up and I'm like, I'm the nerdiest. I'm like, I'm gonna just throw on my banker suit, because I'm like, I don't know what to do, because I'm trying to impress them. And I sit down and they ask me a couple questions, and they're like, okay, how much is he paying you over there? And I'm like, I don't know. Should I say like how much I'm making? And I'm like, I feel like at the time I was making like $45,000 a year or something. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna say 50. And they were like, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm making like right around $50,000 a year. And they were like, okay, we'll pay 75. You want to do that? And I was like, whoa, people will pay me that amount of money to sit and write copy to do what I'm doing. So like, that's why I made the leap to a senior position there. And then as I get started with Dr. X's company, I'm like writing promos, and like I kind of changed the way that they were doing some emailing, where they would send like maybe 1 or 2 emails a week. And I'm like, no, dude, we're sending an email a day. So like their revenue starts to shoot up, their competitors start to notice, and like people start to know, they're like, who's the copywriter behind this brand?
Wow. And
people start pinging me, and they're like, you can do this on the side for us or whatever. And I like talked to my boss. I was like, is this legal? Can I like work at this company? And you can do whatever you want off hours. Like, just don't tell them anything. And so then I started to like, I took on a client here, a client there. And then I feel like it was like 6 or 7 months down the road. And I'm like, dude, I'm making more from my side business than I am my full-time job. So then that was the point when I was like, am I going to do this or that? Like, do I want this like kind of fixed growth vehicle where it's like, okay, it's like 5-10% a year pay increases, or do I want to ride a rocket ship and potentially like have some client stuff? So that's when I made the leap to doing some full-time stuff on my own, and actually running my own business.
Oh man, I really appreciate you for sharing that. Yeah, because everybody's journey is so different. And I really like your journey, because it started with a leap of faith, to be completely honest, but it was a leap of faith knowing that, hey, I'm going to be working with somebody that, you held in high esteem, and you're getting introduced to a career that has a high upside and potential. And, things just happen to work out for you. And I know it has a lot to do with your dedication and the amount of work that you put in. And I think that definitely needs to be stated. Yeah,
absolutely. That's one thing about my marketing that I always try to as copywriters get introduced to my content, get introduced to my world. I'm like, I try to make it clear that if you are doing this 100% because of the money, there's like 100 better jobs to do. Like, go be like a developer at Facebook. They start out at like $400,000 a year. Go be an investment banker like I was on path to do. Go choose any other career path than copywriting. It's the longest way to actually make a bunch of money. So like, if you don't like psychology, if you're not into this kind of stuff, if you're not like obsessive about like if writing is like pulling teeth for you, maybe there's a better vehicle. For me, like, I actually enjoy writing. One day I'm going to write a book, and it's going to be it's going to be so good, and I'm going to be excited about it. But at the same time, it's like, this is the stuff that I would do if no one paid me to do it. Like I've actually used to blog about like personal finance stuff back at, like I used to write down notes. Like I'm a guy who takes a bunch of notes on things. Like, so like, that's the thing I'm always telling people is like, you cannot do this just for the money. Like because if that's the reason you're choosing it, there's like 1,000 other ways to get there faster.
Yeah. Man, that's important. Yo, somebody needed to hear that. Somebody needed to hear that before making that leap. Like weigh all of your options. That's something that I've come to live by is count the costs. Before we make our decisions, oftentimes we don't stop to really weigh and count the cost of the directions that we're planning on going. So yeah, man, I really appreciate you for sharing that. And that actually kind of brings us to something else that you get into, which is digital events. That's kind of how I was introduced to you. How did that happen? What's the story behind how you started to host your own events?
It's funny, right? So like I feel like most of my comeback stories are like someone told me I couldn't do something and then I like was like I'm going to do it on my own and figure it out. And so I actually had gotten in kind of like a spot with I was running an agency with my business partner, and we had gotten it to a really hyper growth level where we were like between two people, we were making a really good income, and we were like, but we got to the end of it and we were like, we have like 15 clients, and we got to a point where we were like, is this really what we want to do for freaking ever? Because also like it just becomes a puzzle piece game too after a certain point where it's like, in order to sign another client, I'm going to have to hire an employee, and then I'm going to train that employee. And I'm like, when is the last time I wrote an ounce of copy at all? And so I gotten kind of removed from it. And at the end, I'd gotten to a place where a lot of our clients, like, I feel like I was like putting forward really good ideas that were just kind of getting shut down. And so I was like, man, I had pitched this one client we had on the idea of doing like a virtual summit.
Okay.
And they were like, one, that's going to be really hard to pull off. Like, do you really think that you can do this by yourself? And two, is that going to be a good lead gen opportunity? Like, are you sure this is going to get you like us customers and all this stuff? And I was like, man, I really feel like this is like a really good idea. Like I had sketched it out and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, one, I'm going to shut down my active involvement in this agency because it's not the kind of work that I want to do. And two, I'm going to go do my own freaking event. And so at the end of, I think it was 2020, I was like, I'm going to host an event, and I did it on super short notice, and it was called the Freelance Copywriting Summit. And we ended up having like close to 3,000 people come to my first one, and I did it all by myself, completely like pitched everyone, ran the whole thing. I actually, back then I didn't have any help at all. So like I did all the interviews back to back to back. So it's 12 hours of me sitting on Zoom calls all day for 2 days in a row. I didn't eat the whole time. I barely was able to drink because I had to like, I was so dumb. And like, I scheduled the Zoom calls back to back to back to back, not thinking that the person would go all the way up to the hour.
Right.
And then I had to end the calls abruptly and then jump to the next one. And then like, okay, here's the next session. It's like, so it was a lot. But it also taught me a lot because anyone who was able to actually come to that event, they were like, this was some of the best content we've seen for 2+ days. It was all live. They were able to interact with people that are big name people in the copywriting space. Yeah. And they loved it. And one of the speakers at the event who had it pitched kind of last minute, his name's Chase Simon, who is a fabulous business partner of ours. And he was like, dude, I can't believe you did that all by yourself with like 1 month's notice.
Right.
We should do an event together, and we're going to do it like in the back half of the year. So we started brainstorming some ideas, and we did one called the Black Friday Summit. And, you know, we ended up getting my business partner, Amanda Gamble, involved, and Chase was involved. And so this one was way bigger than anything we imagined. Like compared to the first one where I did like a puny amount of revenue, and like it was just, you know, mostly a way for me to kind of get some momentum behind like my own personal brand.
Right.
That one did like, we had 11,500 people attend. We had 700 paid tickets sold. We did over $100,000 in sponsorships, and like it was a huge event. So we actually started a digital events business the next year to kind of capitalize on some of that stuff. So we've done 3 events now, 4 events, going on 4 or 5, and they're really fun. And the thing is about the space that I've seen is like, the competition has now everyone has started to copy us, right? So everyone has realized like you can get a lot of people to come to these events. They can be great for getting people to come to. They can be great to you know, monetize in certain ways. And so we've started to see some people just like completely copying us, completely knocking us off. But the good news is we're always thinking around the corner. So we already know what we're doing next. So we have a completely different strategy kind of going into 2023, but it'll be fun to watch a competition try to keep up.
Right. And see, that's the thing, man. When you're a trailblazer, and not just a trailblazer, but one who's always thinking ahead, you know, that's the key. sometimes people have that success and they just kind of rest in their laurels. But it's like, nah, man, we're not going to get overlapped. We're still out here running. We're still out here training.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny because like it was a perfect storm of certain things in 2021 that were really, I don't think any other year could have had going for it, which was we had just come off some lockdowns. So like there was a massive amount of people that were wanting to go to events again, but like there weren't happening. So what are you doing in that scenario? And two, like it was also a perfect market timing in terms of what people were kind of new software, new tools were kind of coming out to really enable a lot of it. So we actually have started to do some proprietary stuff because we use a tool called Hey Summit, and it is not ideal, I would say, for hosting these events. And so we ended up actually kind of, if you experienced our last event, you kind of saw how we do it, where we use like landing pages we build, we use Zoom, we kind of just do everything ourselves. And it's been nice. But at the time it was like new software was coming available, especially at the timing of the market. And so it's like people are trying to do the same thing we did, the same playbook we did in 2021. It's like, dude, you missed the boat. The market moved.
Right. Good luck catching up. Oh man, yo, that's amazing, man. I love it, Rob. Like just the things that you're doing. You're definitely a maverick. When I look at the things that you've accomplished, and the things that you are aiming to accomplish, it's truly inspiring, man. It really is. And with that in mind, right, I never like people to think that everything is winning. What would you say have been some of those challenges that you've had to encounter along your journey?
A lot, right? Like, I mean, going all the way back to the way I grew up, I'm not trying to paint myself in this like, I've overcome every obstacle in the world, but like, I mean, I grew up in like a really small town in Tennessee. Like, I don't know if you can hear the Southern twang in my voice or if I've eliminated it by moving to Idaho, but I mean, I grew up in a town where I feel like it was impossible to imagine that you could, one, ever move away from it, and two, ever do anything with like a digital skill. Like most of the people that kind of like, my dad laid floors, which it's a great industry. It's like, I respect people who do it, but most of the people in my town, they end up going to kind of work at like there's like an Amazon facility there, and there is a car manufacturing plant for Nissan. Okay. So that's the two things. That's like the two outcomes you have. Right. And I didn't grow up in a way that like made it seem like that was possible. My mom had me when she was in high school. And so from the very beginning, like I've always kind of been in a situation where I was like, I don't know, like when I was considering going to college and wanted to get into banking, I was like, my parents were like, well, you're going to have to pay for this your whole way. So like, I feel like there's been like obstacles along the way where I've had to do a lot of self-discovery and like just overcome like a lot of doubt, like where I didn't think it was possible to do anything that I've done. So I'm really like, I'm happy with the path that I've kind of fallen into, but it has not been an easy way to get here for sure.
Yeah. And I'm curious, when did you begin to work on, or no, let me take that back. When did you recognize that, okay, I can leave this small town. I can, go beyond just, working at the plant or doing some other form of work that was there in town. Like, what was the first thing that introduced you that there was a world outside of the town that you grew up in?
It's kind of funny because it's like a 90-degree turn from what we've been talking about before, but it was actually, I landed in an internship selling insurance. And I landed it the weirdest way. So I had gone to, I'd got into college. I basically was like, I'm going to study my butt off because I can't pay for this stuff. Like I worked in high school, and I worked at a company called, I don't know if your listenership will be familiar with it, but it's called Crystal, which is like the White Castle competitor.
Yeah, like White Castle.
Yeah. So that was what I did in high school. So I was like a burger flipper. And that I just saved that money to buy, like to pay for my car, to get into school, to pay for to and from school. So that's what I did. And I was really happy about that. And I was like, I was like, I've got to make great grades in school because I have no other way to stand out. Because I went to like a state school. Most people that work in like banking, they end up getting into like Harvard or Yale or these big name schools. I'm like, I'm in a state school. average dude. I've got to have great grades.
Mhm.
So I had gone to this like career fair that our school was having, and they had given you these badges that like
Mhm.
designate like what your GPA is. And I was like, well, mine's 4.0. So I'm going to walk around here like
Yeah.
God on campus or something. And I had gone up to this one booth. It was like one of the ones that no one was kind of around. And the company was called Northwestern Mutual. And I had
Okay.
never heard of it before, but it was in the finance area. And I was like, okay, let me walk up to these guys and see kind of what's up. So they have like a recruiter walk up to me and she's like, oh, you're into finance. Oh, I see your badges. You got a 4.0. And she's like, goes on this like spiel of like all this stuff, like all these perks of like working with this company. I'm like, this sounds incredible. Like you can do this in like finance and all this stuff. And they're like, okay, so you've got to come up with a pitch for why you should work with this business or whatever. And I still don't know what they do. Like I don't have no idea that it's like insurance sales. So I'm assuming it's going to be like banking or something. And so I do this presentation, like why they should hire me, and show up to their office or whatever. And I'm sure it was one of the weirdest presentations they've ever endured, because I'd showed like photos of me as like a baby, and I was like, here's all the things I had overcome and all this stuff. And I was like, I told him, I was like, you will not find anyone who works harder than me. I still don't know what these guys do. You will not find anyone that's gonna like put in more hours, all this stuff. They're like, okay, this kid is crazy. Like, let's give him a shot. You're going to work in insurance sales. And I was like, what did I just sign up for?
Right.
And I sucked at it, dude. I was so bad at it because I was so awkward. Like I was a numbers nerd. Like I had I've gotten better at speaking like over time, but like I'm still not as good. But like imagine the skill level you're assessing now, like 1,000 times lower. So like I got to a point in the internship where they kind of pulled me aside and they were like, dude, you've got to sell at least some policies. Like you can't just be working in this internship and not booking any appointments, not doing anything. And so I went up to the guy in our office who was like the best one there. And I was like, I came to him so humbly and I said, man, I need your help. Like, can you please kind of help me figure this whole world out? And he was like, yes, if you will listen to me, I can coach you through a process of like, one, being better on the phone. And what you're going to do is you're going to set appointments for me. You look 10. Like I looked like I'm 10 years older than I was now. So like, imagine me 10 years younger with like 40 less pounds on. And so showing up, trying to sell these adults on like insurance policies was like not a good look. So let's just say that. So he was like, what you're going to do is you're going to memorize this script. You're going to say it with this way of saying it. Like you're going to enunciate your voice and all this stuff. And I started to kind of learn about that. And he's like, you're going to book appointments for me. And if I close the deal, I'll split the commission with you 50-50. And I was like, this sounds like a great opportunity. Let me see if I can do this. So I go home and I'm like, I've got to like practice some sales stuff. So I'm practicing like these sales calls on the phone and like calling him like on his drives. And he's like, you're still not good at this. Like, go get this guy, Jim Rohn's tapes. Like, go get this guy. He started recommending all this stuff to me, like Tony Robbins and all this stuff. So I start listening to these guys and I start like practicing, like saying back in the same tonality and like way that they talk. And after like, 3 or 4 weeks of this, like I'm getting pretty good. Like I'm getting to a point where I'm like, I can get the energy right on the call. I can get these people laughing, like they're ready to book the appointments. And so I started filling up his calendar with like 50 meetings because I started doing these cold calls and we start to close some deals. And these deals are like life-changing to me as an intern, to the point where I'm like, I am addicted to personal growth. Like all the stuff I was consuming through Jim Rohn, all the stuff I was consuming from Tony Robbins, I was like, one, I was absorbing like the tonality and like how their energy would just be like so magnetic. But then I was also kind of getting to the point where I was like, also what they're saying is really interesting. And so that's when I really started to like become obsessed with this idea that like, as a person, as a vehicle, like you can change, right? So you can go from like the guy in the office who is like being told like you suck to like standing with confidence and like having the ability to close someone on the phone. So I ended up actually becoming one of the top performing interns in the whole Southeast.
Wow.
With 50-50 deals. Like I wasn't closing any of them myself. So I had like double the volume of a lot of people because I was just like letting this guy close the deals. And then eventually it got to the point where he was like, you could try this on your own. And that was like a big pivot for me when I was like, wow, you can change anything about yourself, and you can do it fast.
Mhm.
And so that was a big turning point for me for sure.
Oh man, see, like I never would have guessed, man. Like, and like that's the beauty of having conversations like this is just being able to learn different things that I never would have guessed that you got your start to a certain extent of knowing like, yo, I can get out of this small town by developing my ability as an insurance salesman. And not just that, but like you mentioned, the personal growth aspect of it, of I'm changing who I am and actually improving who I am and taking myself to higher heights, man. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really was. It was also a lot of fun too, because as I started to get obsessed with it, it was like no work on my part, right? So it was just like me showing up, doing some phone calls, and he would close the deals, and I was like, that was also kind of my foray. And when I kind of reflect back on my career and how I ended up in copywriting, it's like that was perfectly seeding the way, right? So it was like
Yes.
learning sales, learning psychology, learning like how people respond to stuff. So, you know, I actually prefer to actually do like video sales scripts and actually do like things with like the spoken word, because
Mhm.
it was actually like the primary way that I'd learned in the beginning. So like
Right.
in the beginning, when I would do some like promos for like Agora or different companies, I would
Mhm.
writing it, I would be like kind of stiff, and I'm like, this is kind of hard to actually do.
Mhm.
And then I would just pull out my phone and throw out the recording
Mhm.
app and just be like,
Yeah.
here's how I would say it on, and then I would get it dictated or
Yeah.
transcribed. And then that would actually be like way better copy. And so I was like, this is how I could go real fast.
Unlike the cheat code.
Yeah.
I love that, man. I love that. And when you look back, now being in a position where you have so much that you can teach others, for somebody who is interested in getting in copywriting, they recognize, like you mentioned before, it's something that they enjoy. They're not just chasing the dollar. What's required for them to write unique, compelling sales campaigns?
Part of it is, there's no substituting the fundamentals. I feel like that's the one thing about like this industry and the ropes of this industry that so many people try to skip 3 steps. And that's why they kind of fall, because it's like go look outside and go see a flight of stairs and try to run up, but skip the first 9 steps. You're gonna hit your
Yeah.
knee on the side. You're gonna
Anybody as a
stumble.
kid that's tried to do that, like I've been that kid, you bust your shin, trying to
Yeah.
jump a few stairs.
Totally. That's kind of how it always feels. And it's like sometimes I'm always like, I see some of the positioning of things out there, and I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, if we substituted the word engineer with copywriter, you would never say, here's how to become an engineer in 3 days or 5 days or whatever it is. You would never do that. And yet that's the way most people treat this industry, is it's like, because because the barrier to entry is so low. It's like you have Google Docs and your keyboard, and you're pretty much in business. And that there's no industry that has that low of a barrier, right? So it's
Right.
like, but the thing is, there's so many grades to writing. There's like, the base level where you're just, writing something to be performative. And then there's stuff where it's like whole next evolution of ideas where it actually moves people to take action in droves. So I feel like when it comes to actually thinking about like how to design an effective sales campaign, that's like part of it is just, you've got to go back to those fundamentals. Like if I say the word headline, you should know instantly what I mean. If I say call to action, you should know what I mean. You should also kind of be versed in the lingo of like how people write this stuff.
Mhm.
But then that's the part where another group of people start to go astray, because they become obsessed with this idea that the writing is the most important part of it.
Mm.
And I'm here to break it to you today. And maybe I'll just share this with you right now, which is the fact that audience selection and being able to create offers that are really compelling move the needle so much more. And this is something that like a lot of copywriters do not consider.
Mhm.
As like, if you're going to choose, if you're thinking of this as like starting a business, and you're not just like, okay, I'm not going to just like go make, $100 or $200 on Upwork doing something once or twice. I'm going to build a business. And in
Right.
that business, you've got to be very selective about the kind of things that you do. Cause like, imagine you're starting a company like Facebook. You don't have to
Yeah.
be that big, but imagine if he had just chosen to have the worst stack of developers from the beginning. It's like, dude, your code's going to crumble. Your website's going
Right.
to crash. It's all going to come burning down. It doesn't matter how good the text on the page is. Like, you've got to have like the people that are
Right.
good. So for me, I'm like, how do I get good? Where are people spending like a lot of money? And how can I study that? Because if you're writing a wave, it's
Mhm.
way easier to ride one that's like massive, and you're just like, you're kind of going along the with the trend.
Yes.
And so many people, they like work with these clients, or they work in these niches where it's like, it's impossible to get these people to spend money. So if you want to know the secret to success with like a sales campaign, it's like, one, get really good at choosing audiences that spend a lot of money. Like, I know so many people who my dad works, as I said, in like the flooring industry. And like he's actually in charge of like laying the floors and doing things like that. But there's a business that they're always interfacing with. They're the guys they're a different crew. And the guy who runs that company, they do, I think, like 15 million a year in revenue.
Wow.
And they basically just install limestone into kitchens. So it's like, think about like, where people spend a lot of money. It's like in their house, when they go skiing, when they go golfing, when they're investing in things. These things are like, the market momentum is with you. You don't have to be the greatest copywriter in the world if you've chosen like a great niche where people are already spending a lot of money. And then you get to become an offer creator. So you get to get creative about like, maybe we're putting like a free plus shipping thing together. Maybe we're, coming together with like a cool pamphlet that's like, you get the mail order back. And then you think about the copy. The last thing, it's actually the last part. It's the last step.
Wow.
So many people, like, they go into these designs of these things, and it's like, you're actually going to fail from the start because you started at the wrong spot. You got to start with the people and then create offers for those people and then think about the words. And as a copywriter, this is one of the things that's really exciting, because it's like, if you've chosen the first two right, you don't really have to, it's not about, you can kind of screw up a little. You don't have to be the world-class copywriter if you know how to do the other two things really well.
Wow. Man, super powerful, Rob. And one of the things that I've noticed is how important our habits are. And I'm curious, what would you say are some daily habits that you would attribute to your success, both in life and business?
I mean, for me, it's like, it comes down to the basics, right? So if I take a look at anyone's schedule, I can pretty much tell you with like a high degree of certainty how probably successful that person is by just knowing a couple core things. What does their sleep look like? What does the first hour of their day look like? And, how are they treating nutrition and what the stuff that goes in their body? And those three things alone, like, if you just tell me that those three things about someone, I'm like, I can tell you with a pretty good degree of success, like how happy that person is, how successful that person is, how trending up things are. So like for me, like, I mean, there is no substitute for good sleep. Like, I've had periods in my life where I don't even know how I've done this, where I've been getting by on like 4 hours of sleep. And I'm like, no wonder my copy was sloppy. No wonder my ideas were bad. I was exhausted. I was waking up like dead tired. So like, you cannot, like, if you're going to have any routine, like people say, start with your morning routine. It's like, no, dude, you need to have a night routine. And that night routine, like, for years now, I've been taking like a large dose of magnesium at night. And I take actually CBD oil mixed with some melatonin. Sorry, I was blanking on and I take like a very large dose of it, because I'm like, when I go to bed, I want to be asleep in 15 minutes and I want it to be lights out. And so like, my girlfriend and I, we're very religious about our sleep routines, because like for me, I'm up early. So like I'm up sometimes 4:30, 5 a.m. So I'm like, I got to be in bed for that to be true. And for me to actually have energy for the day, that I've got to be in sleep by like 9:30, 10 o'clock at the latest. Because if I'm going to get a full night's sleep, that's a core part of it. And then it's like, start to look at your day. It's like, what does that first hour of your day look like? Yeah. Because it's going to set the tone for everything. I know so many people, they like, the first thing they do is they like pull out their phone and they get on Twitter, and that's fine if you want to do that. Like, if you want to tweet something out, that's fine if it's for business. But it's like, are you watching a YouTube video for the next 15 minutes? Are you just kind of dillying around, like listening to music? Like for me, I'm like, one, I know that almost every day that is successful for me, I've done some type of reading in the morning. So like for me, I'm like, I'm probably going to read like a good nonfiction book. I can't tell you how much, like, so many copywriters are like, what is the business book I should read? It's like, no, go back, read some good storytelling. So like, I'm obsessed with reading thrillers. Like if you know how to keep someone on the edge of their seat in a book, that's going to charge your copy to a new level. So I'm reading for 30 minutes. I'm chugging a glass of water. I'm probably going to get a little caffeine. And then I'm getting to work. Like I'm going to make a list. Like every day I sit down and I make a little to-do list. Like I have a little just a pad and paper. I don't know if you can see that, but I write down all the stuff that I want to get done that day. And then I circle the top 3 and I'm like, if these things get done today, I've had a successful day.
Right.
And then I just work off a pad and paper. I'm not one of those people who's like got all these apps, all this stuff. And most of the time, I'm not going to lie, by 9, 10 a.m., since I've gotten up so early, I'm done for the day. So the rest of the day is like low stakes. Like I can go and I can do like whatever it is going to look like for like getting ahead on things, doing some important stuff in my business. But like at the end of the day, you cannot substitute that. Also, like nutrition, like I'm at the beginning of my career, I was kind of lax on that. Like I was kind of like, maybe I won't eat today, or maybe I'll eat in the afternoon. I'll just veg out on like Chipotle. But now I'm like very, very strict on the way that I kind of treat food and nutrition. Like I'm not going to tell your audience how to eat or what they should eat. But for me, I'm like, I limit carb consumption because for me, I'm like, there's like tons of science around this, and maybe it's not true, maybe it is, but I just know personally, I feel really good when I'm like carb depleted. So like I eat like a lot of just meat, like raw, like not raw meat, but like just like meat with like vegetables and bone broth and like honey. And like, that's pretty much it. That powers my day. Like I get to 2 or 3 p.m. and I've probably had a 16-ounce cup of bone broth. I've probably eaten like 8 to 10 ounces of ground beef or like a steak. And I have eaten some spinach and probably like a couple spoonfuls of honey. And I'm good to go. Like I'm good. I haven't taken a dip. My energy rides right all the way up till, what is it, 3 p.m. today. And I feel great.
Right. Oh man. Yo, I love that. And I really am appreciative of you putting the emphasis on sleep because, you know, in our culture today, so many people are all about, you know, grinding and team no sleep. And it's really to a detriment when people do not prioritize getting good sleep, man. It's so important. So important.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can every bad decision or every time I've actually felt really bad, I'm always like, there's probably 2 things that need to occur. I need to drink more water and I need to take a nap. And most of the time, like if I just do those 2 things, I feel exponentially better. So it's like, just like, what if I was just already hydrated and well rested, and then see if I feel bad.
Oh man. Yeah. Rob, this has been such an amazing conversation. There's so much more that we could dive into, but I definitely want to be respectful of your time. Before we go, there's a fun segment that I like to have with my guests. It's called Pick 3. So essentially what I'm going to do is ask you to pick a random number, and then there's going to be a question that's going to be attributed to the number that you select. So whenever you're ready, just let me know what your first number is between 1 and 16.
9.
9. So the question is, if you could partner with or have lunch with any business owner, influencer, or celebrity, who would it be?
Oh man, that's a good question. That's like put you on the spot. I feel like I would try to choose someone who is like very elusive. Like it's almost impossible to pin them down because like, you know, most people like they're publicly available. You could kind of see how they think. And then also there's like a whole saying like, right, like you don't want to meet your heroes. So like my gut reaction when he first asked me that question was like, I was like Alex Hormozy, because like I love his content. I find him to be a really fascinating dude. He's kind of been interesting right now, but then I'm like, I don't really want to like I'll get Alex through my YouTube videos. So let me think if there is someone a little more under the hood or lesser known that I might be able to get access to. You know, actually, it brings me back to my time when I was actually with Agora and a different branch of them. I don't know if you're familiar with their business model or whatever, but they are kind of famous for being in the world of direct response. And there's a guy there, his name is Jed Canty, and he's one of the most fantastic, brilliant copywriters who I've ever been in the same room with. Wow. And it would be so cool to hang out with him again and just kind of chat with him unlimited for like an hour or so. So yeah, that would probably be my answer.
Nice. Yo, I love that. What's your second number between 1 and 16?
3.
3. The question is, what is a book that you want to read, but you haven't picked up yet?
Well, it's probably my new copy of Upgrade that I just got by Blake Crouch. Nice. I love everything by him. He's a fascinating a thriller writer, and he has the most
books. So which one would you recommend? I've never read any.
Oh man, you can't really go wrong. I think if you were going to start with one to kind of get like hooked on the initial idea and kind of see if it vibes with you is a book called Recursion by him. It's a yellow cover. It's a great one to start with. From there, if you like that one, I would go to the Pine series that he's written. That is really good. It's a 3-part series, and it is such you'll if you're into reading, like, dude, you will binge these books within like 48 hours, all three of them, and they're like 300 pages a piece. I never read anything faster. And then from there, I would go to Dark Matter and then some of his earlier stuff. And now I'm sitting here, I'm looking at Upgrade, which is his newest release. It actually just came out on Tuesday.
Oh, man.
I pre-ordered it. It just arrived at my apartment yesterday.
Nice.
And so I've been meaning to start it, but that is my weekend this weekend.
I love that. So Recursion, you said, right, was the first one. Then you said, what was it? Pine. What was it?
Yeah, it's called the Pine series.
The Pine series. Okay.
So if you vibe with that one, the Recursion, you will love the Pine series.
Okay.
The only reason I don't recommend the Pine series to start with is because it's 3 parts.
Okay.
So the first one is not as good. I mean, it's pretty good, but like you'll get the payoff all in one book with Recursion. Okay. So it's not like a multi-part thing.
Perfect. And then the third one you said was Dark Matter, right? If I make it through the others. Okay. Perfect, man. Perfect. Yo, I appreciate you for sharing that, man. Definitely appreciate it. So what would be your last number between 1 and 16?
I guess let's go 1.
Okay. Number 1. The question is, what is a book that has had a great impact on the way that you approach life or business?
Oh, man. The best book I've ever read, which has nothing to do with copywriting whatsoever, is called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And that book completely changed my life. Like,
I've never even heard of it, man. You're helping me out here, Rob.
I mean, seriously, it's not as known in the circles of like personal development because it's not as like the person behind it is not like a big guru or not as forward facing, but it kind of talks about like how to think about like, you know, the person that you are is the sum of the habits that you have. And so if you're kind of unhappy with the way that you feel or the way that things are going or the way that you're thinking, or just you keep finding yourself stuck in the same thought patterns where it's like, man, why even when I succeed, do I end up at the same spot?
Yeah.
It's probably because like some of the underlying habits in thought patterns in your brain. And the book kind of goes into some very specific ways that you can stop those things from forming. So for me, like, this is not like a book that I recommend. It is a textbook to life and a way to actually approach like reinventing your entire self. So cannot recommend that book higher. Like anytime someone is like, what book should I read if I like am into personal growth? I'm like, yeah, obviously your Tony Robbins stuff, put that aside. This is the practical stuff. This is the stuff that is like, if you do the work in that book, you will not come out the other side a better person. Like guaranteed.
Wow. And do you remember the author's name?
You know, that's funny. I actually don't remember the name of the author.
And no pressure, because I know it's easy oftentimes to remember the name of the book, but the author isn't always. But I was just curious if it was at the top of your mind or not. But no, I'm definitely going to look into that book for sure. So, man, I really appreciate you, Rob, for coming on here. So many gems that you've shared with us today. Before we go, I just want to hand the mic over to you. Are there any questions that you like to ask me personally, or any last or closing words that you like to leave our audience with?
I do have a question for you. You are so good at interviewing. Like, how did you get so skilled at actually being able to like kind of flow with this? Like, I feel like you are the man when it comes to that flow state. Like, I could throw anything at you and you'd kind of bat it back.
Oh, man, I appreciate that. Yo, it is very similar to your journey. Is like time really is I think time. I've been doing this as a podcaster for over 10 years. And, you know, it's just putting in more reps. And I'll be honest, when I first started, I was green, man. Like, I was so green. Like, people used to ask me like, yo, did you go to school for communications? And I was similar to you. Like, nah, I was a finance guy. I was a numbers guy. I was like, I had no idea that I was going to be doing anything that had to do with communications and media. I'll be honest, Rob, like I was the kid in school, whenever I found out in a class that I had to do a presentation or any type of public speaking that was required, I would actually drop. Like, that is how petrified I used to be of public speaking. So I feel like it's so interesting to look back at how I felt about speaking and talking to other people to where I am now, man. I definitely couldn't have predicted it. But yeah, man, it's just, I enjoy having these conversations, learning the stories and the journeys of very interesting people such as yourself, and just connecting. Like I was sharing with you before we got on, I don't even really so much look at it as an interview. Like I throw you a question, you throw me an answer, but I'm really genuinely curious to know about your journey and then having the opportunity to share that with our audience.
It comes through, man. You seem so authentic and you are excellent at what you do. So it was a treasure being on. So
I
I'm just,
appreciate that, man.
it was
Thank
good.
you. Any other questions or any other last or closing words you'd like to leave the audience with?
I mean, if you're interested in learning more about copywriting, I guess I would be shameful not to mention kingsofconversion.com. You can jump on my free email list. Um, it's a pretty fun ride down the rabbit hole if you go down it.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. I can definitely attest to it. It's the reason why we're here today, man. Like, I hopped on your email list, went down the rabbit hole, and like I said, I just really vibed and connected with you as a person. And it's even more so having had this opportunity to speak with you today, man. It's nothing like how you mentioned. Sometimes we meet our heroes, and then it's just like, man, maybe I wish I hadn't have done that. But in this regard, I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to speak with you, and everything that I've read and watched on your YouTube channel, it reflects who you are. And I am a person who highly values character. And I definitely say that, Rob, you are a person of high character. And that is something that I truly appreciate.
Heck yeah, dude. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you
Well,
so much, Rob. Any other place that you like to share with them so that they can get in contact with you, show you some love and support?
my email list is the best way.
Okay.
Other than that, Twitter. I will roast the cold emails on Twitter. I do some threads on there that are helpful, but mostly my email list is the best way to reach out.
Hop on the email list, you guys. Other than that, Rob, thank you so much again for being a guest on the show. If you're ever interested in coming back, you have an open invitation. Thank you.
Heck yeah, dude. And if you're
All
in
right.
Boise ever, dude, I'm down to buy you a drink.
Yo, I appreciate that, man. Thank you, Rob. Thank you.